On 17th October 2020, I spoke on the ways and means to resolve the issue of Tibet. Now, the main responsibility of the Sikong and the Kashak is to seek a resolution to the Tibetan issue. And the other most important job is to look after the well-being of the Tibetans in exile. So these are the two primary jobs of the Central Tibetan administration as a whole, and more particularly the executive or the Kashak, which the Sikong will be heading. The ultimate aim of achieving the just cause of Tibet is to ensure the restoration of the balanced ecosystem of Tibet, which in Tibetan we call it Nu, and Ju are the people, and to guarantee in practical terms the freedom and happiness of the Tibetan people inside Tibet. The middle way approach is the current policy of the Central Tibetan administration, and this policy was first proposed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, supported by majority of the Tibetan people inside and outside Tibet. And accordingly, in 1997, the Tibetan Parliament in exile unanimously adopted it, and subsequently passed many resolutions to that effect, and speeches of the Tibetan Parliament in exile and the cabinet also reflects the policy that we have adopted and how do we go about it. And I was part of the parliament that passed the middle way policy in 1997. Number one, the middle way approach takes into account the consideration of the deteriorating situation inside Tibet. Now we all must understand what is going on inside Tibet. So that is why we have to be informed of what is happening inside Tibet and what the Tibetan people are going through in Tibet. So with the systemic policies and programs laid down by the Chinese government, the very identity of the Tibetan people are at stake. And I have said many times before, forget about independence. Even if we are not able to go back to Tibet in the next 20-30 years, if we are not able to go back to Tibet in the next 20-30 years, even autonomy may not make sense. Now for that you have to understand what is going on inside Tibet. So middle way approach takes into account what is going on inside Tibet and what we are facing today, the difficulties that the Tibetans have to undergo inside Tibet in terms of freedom of thought and freedom of speech and freedom of action. Number two, the middle way approach is rooted in finding a peaceful solution to the issue of Tibet. Now that globally is also very important. If we can resolve the Tibetan issue in a peaceful way, that will set examples to many other conflicts around the world, that conflicts can be resolved peacefully, however powerful the opponent may be. So that is the message that goes through the middle way approach. Number three is that the middle way approach is mutually beneficial. So it's beneficial for China as well as the Tibetan people. We say in Tibetan, Ni me. Ni me is, it benefits both sides. It's a win-win situation for both sides. Number three, the middle way approach is one such approach that the international community can support, because most of the countries in the international community have this one China policy. And the middle way approach does not go against this policy, against their stated policies. That is why the international community will be in a position, have been in a position to support this approach. Number five is that the middle way approach is something that can be considered by the Chinese leadership, even though we did not get the kind of response that we feel the Chinese government should give. Eventually, I am positive that the Chinese leadership will have no other way but to find a solution based on the middle way approach. Number 6, the middle way approach is inclusive of all the 3 provinces of Tibet, irrespective of their historical backgrounds. So there, every single Tibetan should understand our own history as to what has gone through, not just in central Tibet, but also in Kham and Amdo region, understand the historical background of all those things. And the middle way approach is trying to find a solution for the whole of Tibet, for all the 3 regions of Tibet, the 3 provinces of Tibet. That is why the middle way approach is so very important. Now, I don't have to go into the details of how the middle way approach evolved. I'm sure everybody is aware of His Holiness having said many times over that the first thought came into his mind sometime in 1974, when Tibet was, the whole of China was going through cultural revolution and going through very, very difficult times. From then on to the opening of Tibet, when Kongwa Gyaltsabru went to China and met with Deng Xiaoping, and Deng Xiaoping said that we can talk about anything other than independence. Now, since that time, we sent several fact-finding delegations, and then we also had exploratory teams to explore negotiations with China in 1982-84 and again in 1989. And then China did not respond to the 5-point peaceful proposal and the Strasbourg proposal made by His Holiness in the US Congress and the European Parliament in 1987 and 88. And therefore, His Holiness approached the public as to what future course we need to take. The larger number of Tibetan population left it to His Holiness, considering the global China-Tibet situation as to how to evolve a policy regarding that. And His Holiness reiterated his position on the middle way approach. Then we came up with the 2008 the Memorandum of Genuine Autonomy for the Tibetan people. So these are there's a historical background as to how the middle way approach has metamorphosed to the Memorandum of Genuine Autonomy for Tibet. Now, as I always said, we have studied so many autonomous regions around the world, and autonomy is not something that is engraved, that is just like engraving on a stone. It changes in accordance with the reality of the situation. Now, should the Tibetan public decide to elect me as the Sigam, I will make sure that I adhere to the 3 basic principles that I talked about on 2nd September. My principle, my means, and objective. These 3 points. Now, based on these three points, the principle being equitable. Any solution to Tibet will be equitable. That is fair and just to both the parties, that is Tibetans and Chinese, and to Tibetans within Tibet, within the 3 provinces of Tibet. So whatever solution we seek will have to meet the aspiration of the Tibetans in all the 3 provinces. And I have been thinking over these last many years as to how do we go about this? What are the things that causes challenges within our Tibetan community? Now, how do we make sure that these things are not repeated in a future Tibet? So all these things have to be considered. Historical, psychological mindset of the people and the reality of the situation all together, and we'll find a solution to that. I have already considered all that. Now, number two, the means. As I mentioned, I have given it a lot of thought over the years and made my position very clear, even during the 2016 Sejong election, that envisaged short, medium, and long-term activities under the middle way approach. Under the short term, our main responsibility is to represent our people inside Tibet as Tibetans in exile. That is our responsibility. Now, for that, we shall reach out to internationally and to the Chinese leadership, because oftentimes the central Chinese leadership is not aware of what is going on at the local level inside Tibet. Through various means, and inform them of the reality of the situation inside Tibet, and try to bring to an immediate end the wrong policies and programs that are being implemented today that causes irreparable damage to the fabric of China, to the land of Tibet, and to the people of Tibet. Number two, we need to improve human resource and other resources in the Department of Information and International Relations. We have a China desk there, but it's short-staffed. We need to strengthen that section within the department, and also encourage Tibet Policy Institute, which is our think tank, to do more research that are geared towards the situation inside Tibet and China. That is our strength, when we are the people who know the situation inside Tibet, and we should be the one who inform the world about what is happening inside Tibet, because no other people are allowed to go freely by themselves into Tibet. And the Chinese leadership, they don't tell the truth. So that is why we have to do that function in the short term, in terms of what the DIIR China desk should be doing and what the Tibet Policy Institute should be doing. Number three, we have to seek expertise of Tibetans and non-Tibetans. Tibetans who are expert on Tibet issue and China issues, non-Tibetans who are experts on Tibetan and China issues. We will seek input of all these experts while dealing with China. Number three, we have to prepare the young and able Tibetans to advocate for Tibet in their respective countries. Now, with all these social change that we are going through, Tibetans are scattered all over the world in some 37, 38 different countries, and in many countries they have become citizens of that country. Now, as a citizen and as a voter of that public, you have the right to appeal or to make statements, to request, to urge, to call on your elected representatives to work for the cause of Tibet. That we are going to strengthen it, particularly the young Tibetans. We will make sure that the young Tibetans are informed of the current situation inside Tibet. We will make sure that the young Tibetans understand what the CTA is asking for. Then we have a common voice, a single voice that goes into the ears of the international community and also the Chinese leadership. That will help us in maintaining a consistency in our policy approach. And the fifth one is, there is no other way. If we have to find a solution to the issue of Tibet, there is no other way but to reach out to the Chinese leadership. And that we will do it in every possible way, by peaceful means. Some Tibetans might feel that, oh, China might break up like the USSR, which I don't see forthcoming right now. Even under such circumstances, what could be the consequences? Will China be ruled by the military? Or will military be better than communism? Or will China become democratic, or before that a lot of anarchy? So nobody knows. There's a lot of uncertainty involved. So right now, it'll be in short term, it'll be our endeavor to reach out to the Chinese leadership as much as possible in every possible way. That is the short-term program that I intend to implement. And in the medium term, I shall appoint a campaign committee, or a committee to design a series of strategies and tactics under the middle way approach that could be carried out by the Tibetans all over the world and Tibet supporters, and make it known to the Chinese leadership that there is no other way but to resolve the Tibet issue peacefully at the earliest. This is the first point in my medium term. We'll form a committee that will look into issues, that will look into circumstances, that will also devise programs, tactics, strategies, and then let the general public know as to what they can do and what the CTA should be doing. And again in the medium term, I have always followed His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness is the only one leader that is reasonable, pragmatic, very, very liberal in his thinking, and he's the only one who commands respect internationally and also from China and from the government of India. Now, even though His Holiness has devolved all his political and administrative responsibilities, His Holiness' role in resolving the issue of Tibet will remain indispensable. Now, as a Tibetan, I'm sure he has taken that role. He will take that role in future also. He will have to, because that is one of his commitment. And I have always abided by and will continue to be guided by His Holiness advisories. And His Holiness had on several occasions in recent times, particularly when he spoke in Sweden in 2008, and when he addressed the participants of the special meeting last year, and recently when he spoke to some of the disciples from East Asia, his wish to visit China. Now, my administration, should I be given the responsibility, will put in every effort to make that happen, for His Holiness to visit China. And should such a visit result in meeting between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Chinese people, Chinese president, I'm sure, I'm positive that will set the roadmap for a future course of action for our cause. That will be the leading light as to how do we go about resolving the Tibetan issue. These two are my medium-term programs, and then also depending on how appropriate the timing is, we will appoint envoys of His Holiness and seek His Holiness blessing to do that, to particularly work only on Sino-Tibet negotiations. And number three is long-term. Now, our goal is to reach out and seek a solution to the issue of Tibet as early as possible by dealing with China. Now, should the Chinese leadership refuse to consider, then the only other way, which His Holiness said many times, is to reach out to the Chinese people inside and outside China. There are many ways and means to do it. There have already been a lot of support because of His Holiness from the Chinese people, but we need to expand that more. And for that, we need to strengthen our Chinese outreach programs. To work on that, we need more facilities to do that. We also need to encourage our general public to form Sino-Tibetan friendship associations. Because eventually, when the opportunity arises for the Tibetan issue to be resolved, we need the support of the Chinese people inside China. That is very, very important. Now, in the long term, again, even after the resolution of the Tibetan issue, I have given a lot of thought as to ways and means as to how harmony can be maintained between the Chinese and the Tibetans, and amongst the Tibetans as well. So these are my short-term, medium-term and long-term programs that I intend to undertake should I be given the responsibility on resolving the Tibetan issue, and the objective always remains moving forward. The ways and means is collective effort, and the principle is equitable. Now, moving forward, we have to work for the best. I'm not saying hope for the best. We have to work for the best and prepare for the worst. And that is how I intend to take on my responsibility in terms of how do we resolve the issue of Tibet. I know that voters are from Tibetans in exile, and many people are concerned about their own small problems and challenges at the local level, and many people think that they should vote for a person who can address their problem. It's not possible for one single administration to address all the problems that everybody has, but every effort will go to look into all these challenges and meet them squarely. But the more important thing is the reason why we came into exile is because of the occupation of Tibet by the Communist Party of China. So we need to address, the larger number of Tibetans are inside Tibet, and we need to address the issue of Tibet, and that remains the most important responsibility of the Central Tibetan Administration, and I am fully prepared to take that on. Thank you.